What's up guys, we are back and ready to make some serious progress on the all-wheel drive Type R today. So here's where we're at. Motor and trans and TK are in the car. Motor mounts are built for both sides. And now we are running into what I knew was gonna be the biggest problem ever. The factory Type R subframe and steering rack does, I should just backtrack a little bit. The factory placement of the steering rack does not work with our current placement of the transfer case. I have been doing a little bit of thinking. There's a couple different options that we can do. We can move the motor if we need to. It's not a big deal to rebuild the motor mounts, being that we have all of the drawings and everything. We could very easily get more plates cut out of metal, just move the motor wherever we need to. Not a super big deal there. So if we need to do that, we can. We can't move the motor up much higher. We could go up maybe an inch, maybe an inch before it starts hitting. I do believe they do make a slim valve cover, so that might give us a little bit more space if we do decide to move the motor up to give us more space for our steering rack. Honestly, I was so tired last night, I didn't look at it all that much. So let's get the car back up in the air and take a closer look at this rack and T-case fitment. All right, slap the scene back in the air and see exactly what we would have to do to get this to work. I really want to use the Type R control arms and subframe and all that, but whatever it takes, I'm willing to do. Okay. And the thing about it is, if we go much higher on the engine and trans, which of course in turn raises the T-case, there's only so much space before we have to start modding out the tunnel a whole lot. Either way, we're gonna have to pull that brace off, pull that off. The fuel tank's gotta come out. Not a big deal, but I don't wanna start cutting and completely rebuilding the tunnel if we don't need to. I should have grabbed the drive line just to stick it up in there and see. Yeah, as you can see guys, that T-case is right in the way. We would need 4 inches. We would actually need 3.5 inches. So that is where something else comes in to play. Let's take a quick walk outside. A lot of you guys already know about this car, but that's where this car comes into play. This is a 2019 CR-V all-wheel drive, and I'm hoping we can use a lot of parts off this car for the Type R swap, specifically the steering rack. I've taken a look at some CR-V rack images online, and it appears that this motor right here is tilted way down, which gives us hopefully the space that we need. I don't know if the CR-V rack is gonna fit the Type R subframe or if we're gonna have to use the CR-V subframe as well. But basically what I need to get done is get this car off the lift and get it out of the shop, get the CR-V in here and get the CR-V subframe, steering rack and all, like the whole subframe assembly out of that car, and then we can put the Type R back on the lift and kind of figure out what direction we're gonna go. Like I said, if we do have to move the motor, I'm not opposed to that, not a big deal. Of course I don't want to because it's in a good place now, but if we have to, it is what it is. All right, hopefully the strap don't break. I'm guessing the e-brake is on. That's the unfortunate part of having a car with an electric brake. Power, we need, hopefully powering just a fuse box is enough to get that parking brake off. That would be ideal. All right, please work. We got dash lights. Damn. Nothing. I guess plug in the ECU and see what happens. We gotta get that parking brake off somehow. Okay, will that help? Brake on. Come on. What else could we plug in? Hey, we got it. I knew that was the problem. So the problem was the electric parking brake sensor wasn't seeing enough pressure because we had the front brakes off. So I threw the front brakes back on, built pressure, gave enough pressure to the sensor, and it allowed us to turn off the parking brake. We are good to go. Let's get this thing out of the shop and get that CR-V in the shop. Look how cool that looks. Ready? Let's do this thing. This is your new daily, Jared. Better watch out. This thing's mint inside, actually. How do you unlock the steering on a tray?
Is there something on?
There ain't no key. You can't put the key nowheres.
There you go.
What the fuck is going on here?
Oh my god.
This is a badass rack. We're gonna have to go back a little bit and then forward. This thing's heavy as hell. We ain't gonna crank it all the way and go in. Yeah. All right. Maybe I'll just K24 swap the CRV. Come on, Trey, hit the gas. It's almost as bent as your rod that came out of your motor. What a shit show. I guess buying a car that's hitting the front to use parts off the front isn't probably the smartest thing I've ever done. It appears, and I'll confirm when it's up in the air, but it looks like all the mounts are broken off the power steering rack, which is pretty much what I bought this car for, is the power steering rack. Let's take a first look underneath the CRV and see how everything's sitting. This motor is pushed so far back, but we should be able to get an idea. That's weird. Oh gosh, everything's, oh yeah. Yep. This is a setback. But check this out, the T-case comes underneath the rack. So the rack sits up super high and the T-case comes underneath. It's completely different than what I thought it would be. I thought the T-case was gonna sit low, or the rack was gonna sit low and the T-case came over it. Can I do any sort of mock-up though? If I can use the subframe and rack for mock-up, that would be a huge help. It's about all I can think that I could do with this setup. Even the rear, look at that. Everything I want off this car is not even usable. Well, I should have been a little bit smarter in picking out a donor car for the swap. I was very, very excited though, because this one was here locally at the IAA branch, which by the way, guys, if you want to save money on your registration fees, you can use my discount code, which is Devin23, and it'll save you $50 on your registration fees. Got very excited with it and I decided to pick it up. So I might as well do what I can. I'm gonna go ahead, pull the subframe anyway. Subframe and steering rack and control arms and whatnot, and see if we can make anything work. Obviously these parts I'm not going to use on the car, but if we can still use them for mock-up purposes and see if any of that is even going to work for us, then that would be a huge plus. So let's get to work, pull off the wheels, bunch of junk underneath that we can pull off, and let's see if any of these parts are going to work on the swap. All right, so here's what we got. Subframe, the steering rack, and the sway bar. Everything is kind of assembled, and for mock-up purposes, I'm probably gonna have to weld back this steering rack a little bit because, as you can see, the mounts are snapped in half. But the T-case, of course, goes right through the middle there, which is brilliant. I did not know that is how it's set up. Unfortunately, it's very late right now, so I'm gonna pick this video back up tomorrow. All right, let's go get this thing glued back together so we can do some mock-ups with her and see what we can get figured out. All right. We got what we needed off the CRV. This thing's going back outside. The steering rack is welded up. So let's just get the Type R back on the lift and start messing around. Hopefully that strap don't break. It's a little bit sketch. I guess that doesn't really matter if it does. Yellow hauling ass. All right, well, come steer, Jared. Come try to like steer it a little bit. It's a little bit sus up here. Type R's back on the lift. Let's see what we figure out with the front end. So the best option, if it's possible, is, in my opinion, gonna be to bolt the CRV rack onto the Type R subframe. And if that doesn't work, then hopefully use the CRV subframe and rack with the Type R control arms. And if that doesn't work, then time to bust out the cutoff wheel and a welder and make it work. Look how similar these two guys are though. Very, very similar. So here is what we figured out. The CRV rack it wouldn't be an easy fit to the Type R subframe, but of course the CRV rack on the CRV subframe is gonna be the next best option, and it does look like with a tiny bit of modification, the Type R control arms will bolt right up. Check this out. They're damn near the same. As you can see, the only difference is the lower ball joint, just a different style. So now that I know what we're gonna do there, the next thing that we need to do is try and get the subframe and the steering rack up in the car. And I think the biggest hurdle there is obviously gonna be the mounting points of the subframe. They do look very close to the Type R. And the next biggest hurdle is the height, this versus that. So when we get to that point, we'll have to do some calculations and maybe do some modifications to the body of the car. Let's throw in just the subframe first because it's very light by itself. Now, of course, the CRV subframe is destroyed. Those mounting points are gonna be all over the place. But if we know it's close, we can modify and make it work. Obviously not that one, but a good one. Now this part right here, where the rack connects to the column, that might have to be severely modified. But that's okay. Oh yeah, look how bent this thing is. There ain't no way. But let's see if it's close. Please be easy. I'm gonna laugh if it just bolts right in. All right, we're a little off. Holy smokes, it looks so close. Okay. Bolt number 1 is in. Holy shit. Bolt number 2 is gonna go in. What about up here? What are we hitting? Oh man, this is gonna be tough because it's so freaking bent. It looks so close. I may just have to start off with an actual good subframe because these aren't very accurate. This isn't very accurate data. So that's in, that lines right up. I'm guessing if it wasn't so freaking bent, that would line up. Because look at this. That is way to the right, that's way to the right. Oh yeah, she bent. But I think it's close enough to where we could take a stock, good CRV subframe and make it work. A little tight on the pan. Motor might have to go up just a tiny, well, it's impossible to say because it's bent. So it could be perfect. And now you can see the T-case here. I say, let's pull the subframe back out, slap on the rack, put it back in and see where we're at. Come on, baby. What's holding up? All right. So freaking close. It needs to go up just a little bit. Looks like this is definitely gonna work. I really need to go pick up a good subframe, but as you can see up here, that hole does need to be modified a little bit. Shouldn't be a big deal. It's already kind of beat up from when this car was in a wreck anyway. So I wanna get this all the way up into the car, get those 2 rear bolts back on with the stem going through the body. And then from there, we can see about fitting the T-case back in. Whoa, massive, massive progress. That was, in my opinion, gonna be the biggest hurdle, was getting the T-case to come through with a steering rack and with a subframe installed. And as you can see, we done did it. I think what I wanna do later on down the road is properly modify that guy there. So I should be able to buy that cup that we cut out. I should be able to buy that cup for CRV and probably modify it a little bit and attach it to the Type R body. And that'll be done more legit later on. But for now, at least it fits. I think what I want to do from here is go ahead and install the Type R control arms onto this subframe and we need to make sure our axles are going to be lined up. We can't have those way off at a weird angle. So we are going to have to do a little bit of modification, like I said, I'll probably modify the subframe. It's about an 1/8 inch too tight in here. And then the Type R control arms will bolt right up. Should be able to slap these guys back on and make sure everything is lined.
What's up?
You want to see something cool?
Yes.
You ready for it?
Ready. Ain't no way.
The subframe's so fucking bent, but it's in.
Fuck yeah.
It needs to be modded a little bit, and guess what? Type R control arms bolt right up to the subframe.
Fucking tit.
It's so weird. It's meant to be swapped, bro. It's done.
It's literally meant to be.
Yeah, well, the only other thing I kind of need to figure out is what the fuck I'm gonna do for like the pitch stop. What is the style you said you have again? Because this ain't gonna work back there on the backside. We can do this a little bit more legit on a good subframe, but for now I just want to get this thing figured out. Just need a little bit of clearance. The thickness right here where it goes into the subframe measures out the same on both the Type R and the CRV control arm. So I think I just need a bigger hammer and she should slide right on in. Another minor detail that I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering about is the sway bar. Of course, we could run the car without a sway bar, but it's a little bit janky. Type R subframe, or the Type R sway bar, is 23 millimeter, and the Type R sway bar is probably like a 30 mil. Yeah, 30 mil. So that's gonna be a little bit interesting to figure out, but minor details, we can get that sorted out later. Check this out. It's almost like magic, because we didn't really plan for this. You see this hole? If we zoom in, it's a perfect shot, a perfect line. So I did say earlier that we're gonna convert this car to 114, but of course, as of right now, there is no point because we're using all the factory Type R stuff. Spindle, hub, control arm, coilover, everything off the Type R. Pretty crazy how those things all coming together. Unfortunately, I do not have a half shaft, so I can't, well I do, I have a Type R one that doesn't even come close to fitting, so I can't really tell if the passenger side's gonna line up, but being that the driver's side is 100% perfect and the motor and trans is completely centered, I'm guessing the passenger side is gonna be spot on as well. So I'm not too concerned with that. Hey, I'm looking for both front axles for a 2006 RSX Type S. Axles are ordered up. They should be in tomorrow. I do need a half shaft, so I'm gonna call it on tomorrow as well to some wrecking yards and see if we can't get a half shaft in. I'm sure a lot of you guys, or some of you guys may be curious as to what we're gonna do for a rear pitch stop mount. So there's a few different options from what I can see. And let me get the car back up in the air and I'll kind of run through these options real quick. Once again, those are minor details that we can sort out later. So I was looking at the CRV and how it's set up. The CRV rear mount goes like that and comes back and connects to the oil pan. So it's possible that we could maybe, possibly, potentially just take a CRV oil pan and bolt it up to the K24. I don't think that's gonna be possible because the CRV is a 1.5 liter. So there was that option. We could always just maybe build a bracket off of the factory or the K24 oil pan, but I don't really want to do that either. It doesn't sound very safe and secure. Next option is going to be to do a mid-plate design or a mid-plate setup. So I just showed you on my phone, they sell a mid-plate and it bolts like right here, and then it comes forward, and we would have to most likely build a bar from end to end on the subframe. Easy enough to do. And last option would be to come straight back to the subframe. Once again, we can take care of that down the road when we are to that stage.